Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. This is your first time a podcast is a personally oriented discussion centered all around select topics. Today's topics are all around the importance of starting early in your real estate journey. Joining me today is Everett Smith, as always, our returning champion. Everett is a licensed associate real estate broker. We also have Scott Nadler, a loan originator at Cross Country Mortgage. Who am I? I'm Will Tarashuk, the founder of Willie T Productions and professional podcast host. So, when should you start the pre-approval process? How much does your credit score actually matter? And are we in a buyer's or a seller's market? I have a feeling I know which one it is. All of that is coming up and more right about now, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. We're talking about money. I wore green. It's only appropriate. Good thing we're not using green screen.
Absolutely. I love it.
Scott, let's start with you. Lenders. What do you do as a lender beyond just giving out the money, your day-to-day, the responsibilities? How do you serve clients?
That's the end goal, right? We want to give money to the client. How we get there from our first conversation to closing, that's that secret sauce. A lot of it starts with having an upfront conversation with a client and learning about their whole financial profile. You know, we want to learn about their income, their employment, the assets, you know, what their goals are also. Where do they want to buy? Why are they buying right now? How much do they want to spend? So uncovering all that early is really where everything starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to do a little bit of analysis, because as they are seeing, are you a good fit for them? You got to be like, are they a good fit for you? So what is something you look for in a client in terms of like their financials, cash flow, red flags, green flags? What makes a good client? What makes a bad client?
So we have a variety of programs. So part of our job is playing matchmaker. We want to match up that buyer with the right program to get them the financing that they need. For us, if you look at a mortgage, it's really like there are four legs to a chair, most chairs. There are four legs to a loan, right? It's your income, your assets, your credit, and the collateral. Collateral meaning the property itself. In New York, we're surrounded by co-ops and condos. So in addition to getting the client approved, we have to get the building approved also. So we need all four of those boxes to be checked. Now, if one of those boxes is a little off, you could still sit in a three-legged chair, conceivably, but there might be some add-ons to the interest rate. It might require some other parts to be a little bit stronger.
Yeah, it's creating risks. You have to find a way to hedge that risk.
Exactly.
Okay, and Everett, from your perspective, as the broker, how easy is it to deal with a lender?
Depends on which lender, right?
I was going to say easy is like, if I'm working with Scott, it's not really working with the lender that I've found is difficult. It's just making sure that we have the lender that best matches with the client's needs. Very similar to how when we are working or speaking, having that consultation so that I can understand what's going on. I'm also doing a little bit of evaluation on the back end for myself to say, is this going to be a good match for Scott? Sometimes they bank with someone that it's a better financing situation, or maybe there's a program that Scott you have that isn't offered somewhere else. But I'm not having that conversation to determine. I'm just saying, I think these people might be a good fit for you. And Scott, you've generally had a lot of either programs for my first time buyers or depending on where they're moving.
And that relationship is really important. Everett needs to be able to trust me to say, you know what, this isn't a great fit for us because of X, Y, Z. And I think they'd be better suited elsewhere because of the following reasons. That upfront call is really a fact-finding call. Oftentimes clients will call us and they'll say, what's your interest rate? More often than not, they're asking that question because they don't know what else to ask, right? And this is before they've even seen a property. This is like going to a doctor and asking them what their diagnosis is before telling them what their symptoms are. Getting that information up front, and then I can communicate that with Everett and let him know, hey, I know they told you they're looking at properties in the $1 million range. I wouldn't go up to past 800,000 in that hypothetical.
Yeah, I mean, also with the bank too. Just because the bank says you can take $1 million loan doesn't mean you can afford $1 million house. Because the bank is giving you money to make money and hedging that collateral. So not always necessarily out for your best interests. So how do you determine that? How do you determine what the maximum is during the pre-approval process?
There's a difference between the maximum that we can lend and, again, what someone's comfortable actually borrowing. So the first step is let's figure out what your max is. What are we able to lend to you? Then from there, we can work backwards. In New York specifically, when we're dealing with co-ops, for example, they have stricter requirements than banks do. So we need to look at it through the lens of a co-op in that example. We're looking at their debt to income ratio. We're looking at how much reserves they have in the bank post-closing. What we require and what the client and their family may need might be different. So we have to have that conversation and be upfront. Just because I'm telling you that you qualify for this, speak to your advisors, speak to your family, and get a good sense as far as if you're comfortable with this payment. Just because we're saying you can do it doesn't mean you have to do it, doesn't mean that you should do it.
Yeah. And how involved are you in that process of working backwards, of finding that kind of middle ground of, okay, here's what much you can take, here's what you can actually afford, now you start looking?
So during my strategy session or my consultation, I don't really do that at all. I'm deferring to Scott on that.
So you hand off all the money.
I need him to tell me that so that I can work with that in mind, because once they find out what that budget is and that monthly payment, what that's really gonna be, I can use that to be like, okay, now that you know what your mortgage is gonna be or have an idea for what that is, here are your common charges and your taxes on top of that. This is an option that might work for you, but I can tell you that's gonna be on the higher end of your budget. Are you still okay with that? I like you to deal with the money. Like, it's better.
By the way, what a smart answer, because you can't be everything to everyone. Clients are asking Everett about what's happening in the market, what's happening with interest rates. If someone asks me if they're buying in the right building, if they're buying in the right location, is this property right for them? I'm deferring to Everett. I shouldn't be playing in those waters. That's not my area. And so for Everett to have the wherewithal and say, you know what, I have my advisors. I know my craft is finding you the right home at the right time for you. I have my advisors that I work with, an attorney, a lender, etc. Talk to them. They're going to help advise you. And that's really valuable, because there's so many agents that try to do everything for everyone.
Because they think they have to.
Exactly.
And an agent, I'm sure you know, you want to serve your clients the best. You feel like you have to kind of take care of them and you feel responsible for them. And advisors kind of feel the same way. They put themselves behind the client as number two, but that can also kind of work to their detriment. Like when my financial advisor told me, Will, I can't really help you on your taxes, talk to this guy, it makes me trust him, the advisor, more. It's like, okay, now I know you don't know something. Like, that makes you human. Right? As opposed to taking the risk of maybe it's bad advice and then, oop, I might need to go fishing for a new advisor.
And I personally do not want to be giving someone bad advice,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to money.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to buying a home.
I mean,
or a co-op.
It's the biggest purchase of your life. You want to make sure that you have the people who deal with their aspects on the regular, everyday basis, dealing with their aspects. That's the smartest thing that you can do. And again, you can do this alone, but I'm almost curious if you have any like stories of a buyer who wasn't represented by an agent and the transaction is just difficult or doesn't end up moving forward because of that.
It could be a mess, absolutely. Right now we know over 89% of people use an agent. So with all AI and advancements in technology, we were told that agents aren't going to be needed. People need an agent. How they're finding a home today might be a little bit different, how they start their search, but ultimately they're using an agent. On the transactions that we worked on, and they're not a ton, but the ones that we have worked on where a buyer is not represented by an agent, a whole multitude of issues can pop up. And not to mention the amount of questions that we're getting that normally they would be given to you. And now we're being put in a position and the attorney's being put in a spot where they need to answer questions that normally would go to a real estate agent. There's a lot more anxiety. Oftentimes those 11% that aren't using an agent, statistically speaking, most of these people are overpaying, right? So maybe these are people who are living in a home that they're renting and then they're buying it and they're not getting the best deal because they're not represented. They don't know what they don't know. This is the biggest purchase of someone's life. You're buying a home, and not working with someone that's navigated this process before and really knows the ins and outs of what makes this work and what makes it a good purchase or not can really be costly down the road.
There's only so much you can Google. Right? There's only so much free information out there, and you guys also got to kind of protect your trade secrets a little bit too. You got to give the sauce, not the full recipe.
I just briefly want to get into the tech aspect of this. We have all of the AI available information. Let's just call it for what it is. Sometimes it's completely wrong.
It just makes it up.
Just making up. I literally had a tenant come up to me to ask me about breaking their lease because they were going to purchase. They said that they consulted ChatGPT to see if it would be costly for them to leave their lease. And it was like, no, you can do it, no problem. And I was like, if you had asked me that question, I would have pointed you to this clause right here, which says, like, you are definitely responsible for the rest of the lease term. So you might want to figure out an alternative for the short term.
It's in your lease that ChatGPT didn't read.
And that's funny because she uploaded the document. So how did ChatGPT miss that? Again, it's just making stuff up at this point. So got to be careful with that. And it's really just like you want as hands-on as many people who actually deal with the product as possible to guide you through it.
Definitely.